When I was younger, I wanted proof. I wanted to defend what I believed with reason, to make a case so airtight that no one, not even I, could doubt it. But when I turned to the Gospels, I noticed something rather strange. Christ never tried to prove who he was, analytically. There are no arguments, no syllogisms, just encounters, experiences, and invitations. That realization left me with a question I couldn't shake. If even God himself never argued his way to belief, then what is the point of apologetics? When I was 19, I met a very old man at church. He died the same year that I met him, but in that short time we had many discussions. He was losing himself at that point and always called me by the wrong name, Jacob, which, to his credit, does have the same number of syllables as my own name, so I didn't mind too much, and I could never bring myself to correct him. He told me about his life, the years he spent traveling the world as a missionary, the churches he started almost by accident, and the family he raised along the way. The greatest service he gave me was to illustrate very clearly in his own kind way that I was not wise beyond my years and was, in fact, just as stuck and confused as everyone else my age. On a particularly dreary afternoon, I decided it would be the perfect time to express my discontent with most of humanity over their inability to uphold a useful conversation. How small talk is not technically dialogue, and about my general disdain for the practice. How I felt that very few people had anything of interest to say. They were just recycling the same songs over and over again. Occasionally they would switch out a verse for a chorus, but the overall composition was the same. And that if I dared to orchestrate an original melody, I was met with confused opposition, opposed to the call and response that I craved. And the crux of it all, I was supposed to love others as Christ had loved me, but when every interaction is a disappointment, I find myself slipping further and further from that ideal. As always, he let me speak and listened as though he was encountering this problem for the first time, though assuredly it was not. And after I had exhausted myself with an admittedly morose monologue, he said the most profound thing. Though all Christians are called to be fishers of men, different fish need different bait. As I grew older, I learned that my perceived problem with conversation was in fact my own fault, just like most other things, and that everyone is incredibly interesting if you simply ask the right questions. But at that time, the realization that I did not have to approach everyone, that there were fish who preferred my bait, was liberating. I decided my mission was for the skeptic, as I was a skeptic myself, and I was deeply interested in the natural sciences and believed that both the physical world and the one above it should be married together as one system of understanding. So, with newfound wisdom, I naively attempted to find physical proof for the belief I staked my eternity on, and soon discovered the world of apologetics. What is apologetics? Apologetics is an unfortunate name. It has nothing to do with apologizing. Instead, it comes from the Greek apologia, or speech in defense. Apologetics comes in many flavors and is just a general practice of defending works of faith through logical means. Christian apologetics is a defense of Christianity. It's a combination of theology, natural sciences, and philosophy that all work together to defend Christian belief. Christian apologetics has a vast history starting at the beginning of the 2nd century and has evolved into many forms throughout that time. I was interested in its most modern mutations, so I dove into C.S. Lewis, St. Thomas Aquinas, and many other thinkers, while at the same time learning church history and culture through various means. I then realized that if I wanted to convince the skeptic, I needed to understand their arguments, so I took a few philosophy courses in college and read many foundational works. Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, Hobbes' Leviathan, Plato's Republic, and even critiques of my own belief system, Nietzsche's Will to Power, and the Antichrist, all while engrossing myself in podcasts and debates online about the same ideas. Though I maintained very little of what I had heard and read, and I understood even less, I slowly found 2 fundamental questions that emerged from all of this reading, questions I had completely ignored. First, how do you even defend an entity which exists outside the bounds of logic and science? And second, why would one ever try to convince someone to love a god with logic when that very deity had never done so? If I couldn't answer these questions, then apologetics to me was useless. For those that already believe, there need not be a defense, and for those who do not believe, if the realm of science and logic is incompatible with the supernatural creator, then what is the point of the occupation? Let's take this one step at a time. How do you define something that exists outside of definition? Perhaps I would find an answer in theology. Aquinas came up everywhere, so I started there. I found this approach called via negation. Define God by what he is not. He is not finite, he is not temporal, and so on. It seemed clever at first, but this immediately leads to the conclusion that he is infinite and timeless, which suggests that he exists in those categories rather than those categories existing in him. We've just trapped infinity inside a box we made up. The scholars who use this method would say I'm missing the point, that the exercise is meant to train the mind to move beyond the conceptual, which is well and good for those who already believe, but for those who don't, it's just word games. Then there was analogical language. When we say God is good or God is rational, we are not using those words by their colloquial definitions. Instead, we are pointing towards a likeness. He is not good in the sense of right and wrong. He is goodness. He is not rational in that he is logical. He is rationality itself. But this felt circular to me. No different than saying God is what he is, or in Exodus where Yahweh defines himself as I am that I am, or I will be what I will be. Now, I don't think it's wrong to do this. After all, Christ, who Christians believe is part of the Trinity, defines God as many things throughout the Gospels. But as a tool for convincing skeptics, it goes nowhere. Then I hit Aquinas' own admission buried in the Summa Theologica. The truth about God, such as reason could discover, would only be known by a few, after a long time, with many errors. One of history's greatest theological minds saying that reason will barely get us there, after a long time, with many errors. And finally, I understood. I was trying to categorize something that exists outside of categorization. To define means to limit, to constrict. Any attempt at defining a deity that is boundless betrays what that deity actually is. I'd spent months trying to trap God inside a logical framework, and the framework kept breaking, not because I wasn't smart enough, but because the project itself was untenable. Okay, so maybe I can't define God perfectly, that's fine. I just need to convince the skeptics, right? So I went back to first principles. Who was I even talking to? It's not Christians, they already believe, so it must be the unbeliever, but I had to ask myself, why do they not believe? Is it because they have yet to be convinced by an undeniable argument? I went back to the Gospels looking for precedent. Where in the Bible do we see logical means to bring another to conviction? I couldn't find it. The Bible presupposes that the existence of God is evident. It says so explicitly in Romans chapter 1, verse 20. If the being that supposedly wrote this book through human hands decided that at no point would it do any good to provide an Aristotelian argument for his own existence, then either the argument is beyond us or reason alone will never make anyone pick up their cross. Christ encouraged people. He called fishermen from their boats. He ate with tax collectors. He wept with mourners. He touched lepers. He didn't debate them into the kingdom. He met them where they were. People are looking for experiences, not processes. No amount of debate can inhabit a human heart. So here we are. No definition. No audience. I'd spent years building a case for something that apparently didn't need or couldn't have a logical defense. So what's the point of apologetics? It is the case that almost no one has become Christian through logic alone. The cornerstone of one's faith lies in lived experience. Although apologetics cannot convince anyone by itself, I believe it can convince others that the faith is not without reason, that it is not silly to believe in a creator, that the realm of religion requires just as many a priori conditions as any other system of understanding. Apologetics exists to provide a rational framework that says it is not wrong, illogical, or strange to bet eternity on a creator, and that the exploration of those ideas is normal and rational for everyone, including those who disagree. That is as far as it goes. Any attempt to define God with mechanical structures or to convince another of his existence through a formal defense is a waste of time. No amount of debate can inhabit a human heart. And maybe that's the point. The defense of faith was never meant to replace faith itself. Apologetics isn't about building a case airtight enough to trap God inside of it. It's about clearing the fog just enough for someone to see that belief is not madness. Logic can open the door, but it can't make anyone walk through it. Only experience, only an encounter can do that. So perhaps apologetics is not for the skeptic at all, and maybe that's what the old man meant all along. Different fish need different bait. Apologetics was never meant to reel in every skeptic. It's just one lure among many. For some, reason is the language that opens the door. For others, it's love, or beauty, or even suffering. The task isn't to win the argument, but to cast as many lines as we can. Logic might point towards the shore, but faith is what carries you across the waters. So who is apologetics for? It's for anyone that needs it. And maybe most of all, it's for those of us still learning how to fish. Thank you.